Greetings, greetings, greetings. I'm super excited. This is kicking off season 3 of the Moving Camp podcast from the United Supreme Council, Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Prince Hall affiliated, Northern Jurisdiction, USA Incorporated. Now, this is a new season. There's new hair, there's no locks, right? So everybody have to get used to that, right? 8 years and had to cut it off, right? So, but all jokes aside, we're excited. So this is a new year, new seasons. We're bringing a whole plethora of information activities to the general body so that we can engage you. This one I am really, really excited for, and I'm gonna tell you the real reason why. My what we're getting ready to talk about, my grandmother was affected. My mother currently is going through some trials at the University of Michigan right now in regards to this topic too as well, especially being people of color. This is something that I believe that this is a topic that we need to be able to kind of go over and dive into and speak about. So, without further ado, I'm not going to keep you all long because, like I said, I'm here to be able to learn myself. I am super, super elated to be able to have two special guests here, but I'm going to introduce the first one. We have Dr. Carl B. Hill, who is the Chief DEI Officer for the Alzheimer's Association. And so, Dr. Hill, I'm excited to talk to you. I'm excited to be here. Again, before we jump right into it, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of the Alzheimer's Association, and then we're going to jump right into it, okay?
I tell you, Mr. Barrett, I'm so excited to be here with you as well. And
Thank you.
thanks so much for inviting me. And our partnership with the United Supreme Council is so important and everything to us. And I know we're going to get into that a little later. I'm leading diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Alzheimer's Association, which is the largest nonprofit in the Alzheimer's and other dementia space. And, we lead the way, to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia, by accelerating global research. We're the largest funder of research after NIH in the United States, and third in the world. You put China in there. Driving risk reduction and early detection, and really important as you mentioned your family member. We help to provide care and support for families and individuals who have a loved one affected by this devastating disease. And so, really, five key areas for the Alzheimer's Association: care and support, as I mentioned, advocacy. We influence, public policy by our advocacy work, education and awareness in communities, telling people in communities what the disease is and how to notice memory changes, research, and then the last one in the latest pillar of the organization promoted by the board is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm so proud and fortunate to lead that for this organization at this time.
No, that's a huge thing to speak about. And like I said before, I was actually impacted. My grandmother suffered from Alzheimer's and dementia, and well as a couple other people. Like I said, my mom's going through the trials currently just to make sure onset preventative matrix, right? And again, until this hits home for you, you're really not aware about it. So I want to have us jump in there and speak about first. Can you explain a little bit what's Alzheimer's? What's that difference than dementia? Like, you know what I mean? Because like I've heard it interchangeably. So
Yeah.
please educate myself in the body. Like, hey, let's learn a little bit, you know?
Yeah, look, this is single-handedly, no question, the most common question I get everywhere I go. And you go through life and you hear it, and you just assume that you know what it is. And so I have no problem clarifying because I tell you, it took me a minute to learn this as well. But Alzheimer's is a type of dementia, right? So dementia is the umbrella term. It's a collection of symptoms related to what we might call cognitive decline. So problems with thinking and memory. This could include behavioral symptoms or agitation, other psychological symptoms. So broad. Think of a broad umbrella, and there's vascular dementia, which is caused by the quality of the blood that flows to the brain. So people who endure unmanaged diabetes or hypertension or stroke, at risk for vascular dementia. You've got Lewy body dementia, frontal temporal dementia. There are 30 other dementias, and we can talk at length about them, but the most common cause of dementia is Alzheimer's. Okay, and this is characterized by plaques and tangles, amyloid plaques and tau tangles in the brain that develop that cause cell death. So when your cells, start dying, it's called neurodegeneration in the brain, and it eventually, causes death. So Alzheimer's is a fatal brain disease. Alzheimer's is a fatal, cause of dementia, form of dementia that influences thinking and behavior and psychological factors that eventually lead to death.
Wow, and you said something again. I know we didn't plan. Like this is the first time me and you're interacting, but I feel like you're teaching to me specifically. Like I'm a type 2 diabetic, right? You wouldn't know it, but like, hey, this is so you just said some you said some trigger words here, and hopefully the audience, you're taking this on, right? And we're taking this seriously. And we're going to talk about how we're going to partner down the road, but
Yeah,
this is really about education and helping out. Now, I want to get an idea because you just laid out, you said there's 30 different ways that this can go. Like, kind of, can you give me the overview of the work? I know we talked about like the five, I think it's like kind of like a pillars in a sense, but specifically, how are you going towards like Alzheimer's specifically? Like, how's that work going with the association?
absolutely, absolutely. And I would mention, Mr. Barrett, that mixed dementia is quite prevalent, right? So people can have Alzheimer's and vascular dementia, right? And so what's key there, for our communities, and when I say our Black African American communities, we know we're disproportionately affected by diabetes, by obesity, by hypertension, by stroke, right? And so poor cardiovascular health over your lifetime, really puts people, in our communities, our loved ones, at risk for, I would say, dementia, maybe mixed dementia or vascular dementia. So that's critical and that's key, and that's something that we've got to pay close attention to in our diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And so, with Alzheimer's, though, I mean, there's been some just great breakthrough, in the past, 15 years, so think of Alzheimer's, as a continuum, right? People may have, no symptoms, but, biological changes, may be occurring in the brain, up to 20 years before symptoms start, right? So things are happening, and then you move into this phase. People call it early Alzheimer's, also called mild cognitive impairment, MCI. And, that's when symptoms of cognitive decline appear. And then, unfortunately for some people, they move from mild, moderate to severe, And so for the longest time, there were only treatments to provide care, and to try to keep people, comfortable, who were experiencing agitation or problems with memory, all sorts of symptoms that interfere with daily activities. And so for the first time, 3 years ago, there was what we call a disease modifying treatment. And that particular treatment has been taken off the shelf and replaced with a better one, and it's called Leqembi. And so Leqembi is not a cure, but it slows the decline, in this continuum, So, and the label for the treatment calls for it to be prescribed during that early stage of MCI, mild cognitive impairment, due to Alzheimer's disease. So it's really important, Mr. Barrett, that we know about the disease, we know about the continuum, we're able to talk about Alzheimer's in that way, and we're able to ask the doctor, about these treatments. We need to know, and we need to know and hear about it from people that we trust. And I know we're going to get into our partnership later, but the Alzheimer's Association, we have 75 chapters all around the country. We're committed to doing work in communities, physically in communities, still going around doing health fairs, town halls, still getting out, looking to work with organizations to get resources to communities. And, what really got us excited was that, you all have the same footprint in communities all around the country as well. And so if we're able to work together to get information like this out, to people about the treatments. I just think of how many lives can be uh, uh, impacted. I was gonna say saved, but this is not a cure. These treatments are modifying the continuum, right? And so more time for people with their loved ones. Could you imagine, being at a place where a person, is diagnosed, but they never make it to moderate or severe, Alzheimer's, and they stay on these treatments to keep them as cognitively healthy as possible, right? And so much happening, in this world. And then the last thing I'd mention, Mr. Barrett, is the availability of a blood test, right? And so what's on the immediate horizon for Alzheimer's is that people are going to be able to get a blood test for what we call biomarkers, right? And so biomarker are reliable predictors and indicators for disease. So you mentioned diabetes, Mr. Barrett. Glucose is a biomarker for insulin resistance in diabetes, right? Cholesterol is a biomarker for heart disease. And so with Alzheimer's, there are biomarkers that people can now begin, and very soon, they're going to be blood tests where people are going to be able to assess their risk via biomarker with the blood test. And before any symptoms begin, people may have the opportunity um, to start, these treatments. In addition with other, a suite of other things that a doctor may prescribe. But this just really gets us to that place of, what we might call risk reduction, or brain health, or maybe even prevention, down the road. But people, will know what their risk is, and they'll be able to act with these disease modifying treatments and other things that are on the horizon. So an exciting time for Alzheimer's for sure, and we got to get the word out, Mr. Barrett.
No, and this is awesome. Like you said something that was very prevalent to me. Understand that it's not a cure, but it's preventative measures and it can extend. Like I give everything I can just to have one more day with my grandmother,
That's
right?
right.
Like it's
That's right.
so it's I hopefully this is hitting home for people. I'm gonna keep harping on this as you're watching this podcast. I'm gonna keep bringing it home. I'm keep bringing it up because I just learned something new. And now it's like, hey, we can communicate. There's things that we can do, and we'll get to our partnership, like you said, later. But now I know, even not being an expert, I know that there's going to be things that we can do to help get the word out and do things. So that's going to be
Right.
huge because that leads down into my next question. Like, because I'm learning from this position that for people of color in our communities, the information train kind of slows down or halts a little bit. So, kind of, what are some of the things, especially in your role, like what are some of the activities, strategic plans that you're putting in place to kind of get more engaged into people that look like me, yourself, and illustrious Downley over there?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we know, almost two-thirds of Americans with Alzheimer's are women. And older Black African Americans are two times more likely than older whites to have Alzheimer's or other dementias. Okay, so there's a disparity here, which puts our community at a priority, I think, for engagement and getting this information out. And I always hate to, start with the sad statistics, but it's really a call to action for us. It means that we've got to consider equity. In equity in this space is, health equity is, doing something different to engage communities and sometimes doing something more, and so the different and the more that the Alzheimer's Association is committed to doing is partnership. And so I started this role about 4 years ago, and the DEI space was, brand new, and so we were able to make 35 national partners in the last 4 years. Working with the AME Church, my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, the Black Nurses Association, the Hispanic Nurses Association, National Council of Negro Women, the Links, are a strong partner of ours, and so we've increased the number of national partners that we have. And then I mentioned, Mr. Barrett, we have 75 chapters around the country. And 4 years ago, we had about 200 partners, around the country doing health equity work, and now that is up to over 1,600 partners, to work with us. Okay. And so, we had the opportunity. And so, when we talk about what we do locally with the chapters, we do community forums, in-person education, health and community fairs, awareness presentations to really go over what I just talked, about the disease itself and the treatments, fundraising events, advocacy, support groups. I wish we had known you, Mr. Barrett, when you were caring for your grandmother, because we had great resources that you could have used, and you could have linked up with other caregivers, who were going through the same process, because we know caregivers do a heroic work, and you all need all the help and support yourself, because it's a journey being a caregiver for someone with Alzheimer's or other dementia diagnosis. And so we do that locally, and then nationally. We have webinars, where we bring people together. We have a Purple Sunday every year for the last 4 years with the AME Church. Representative Maxine Waters joined us to talk about the work that we're doing with her in the Los Angeles area, the tremendous conferences and social media campaigns. So we're looking to activate on the partnerships that we have to get our resources, and many of our resources are free, to communities in ways that they could be effective. So we don't do DEI simply because it's the right thing to do, but it's the effective thing to do. It's good science, and it's good engagement, and quite frankly, we're ready to activate on these partnerships even more as we move forward.
No, and that's a perfect segue too, because we're talking about the partnership and kind of what we're doing here at the United Supreme Council for the Northern Jurisdiction. You said something there. You were on par. You were shooting for the moon. You were getting it. But I must say this: Royal Blue, Pure White. It's one of the greatest things that you're getting. I had to, it had to come out. It had to come out, right? We're all
I, I
brothers here.
always I always put that out there because fraternity men are everywhere,
Yeah.
and we're more alike than different.
Oh,
So
absolutely, absolutely.
it's always a. I'm looking forward to our guest that you're going to bring on, because he represents another couple of colors as well.
Yeah. So I love it. I love it. I always have to put that in there, and hopefully people can see the jovial nature of this, and in the bond that we have here that we're building up.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
what we're doing right now is for the body and the members that are looking, I'm getting ready to induce our liaison or our point of interest for the person that's going to be knocking it out the park here for us for the United Supreme Council. I have illustrious Kenyatta Donnelly out of the Orient of Pennsylvania that I'm gonna have join our call here too as well, and then talk about some of the partnerships we're having. We'll go back forth, still crack some jokes, give out some phenomenal information, and hopefully inspire people to do more and be action oriented. So, right here is Illustrious Donnelly. How you doing? It's a pleasure seeing you again, sir. How's everything going for you?
Everything is well. I'm just appreciative that you held back the man of achievement for last. You know, let you other fraternities, get out first and bring me in a little bit later, to bring
Oh,
some class to the call.
oh, see, I love it. I love it. We would have a good time here. I love it. I love it. So here, illustrious sir, I jumping right into it, I want to know from what we were looking at. So, with our partnership and what we have, question is what is that partnership with the Alzheimer's Association, United Supreme Council Initiative? Like, what is it about? Like, give us a high level overview of what we're doing. Like, kind of walk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, so Dr. Hill, touched on some of it. And, if I could encompass it in a word or two, it's engagement, it's community engagement, right? you know, for the Alzheimer's disease in particular, and many things that, affect folks, our people are often disproportionately impacted by these diseases, right? Either because of social determinants of health or because of, our makeup, because of, poor, eating or diet habits, whatever those reasons may be. Typically, we are impacted, disproportionately worse than others. And on top of that, there is the known and real distrust within our community of the medical community, right? Because of the history of medicine in this country, the things that have happened in the past, the things that have continued to happen, the studies that we see on maternal, prenatal deaths and prenatal health and those types of things. So we see that still happening. So people have that distrust. This partnership allows us to first educate our members on what's happening in this space and then be the trusted voice to bring the Alzheimer's Association along. Dr. Hill and I were talking in a meeting the other day, and I said, a lot of people who get excited about this topic want to run and rush in. I think our position in this is that we need to be prepared to walk, right? We need to be prepared to take the walk along with our membership, educating ourselves, and then putting ourselves in a position to bring the Alzheimer's Association along that walk into our communities. So where there isn't trust, where there aren't doors that they haven't been able to, where there are doors that they haven't been able to open, use our history in these communications, our trust in these communications to open those doors to get our people to start having the conversations, right? Because that's what it's about. A lot of our people, and we know it from our family members, people get older and we say they're getting, forgetful and, big mama just, she's not, keeping it together the way she used to. And we think that's all it is. And we're not having the questions to say, maybe it's something else, right? Maybe it's something else, and maybe we need to look into that something else and get some testing done and see if there's something that we can do to slow down this process rather than just kind of sweep it, sweep it in the closet or sweep it under a rug and not deal with it. So that's what this relationship is about, right? A lot of these partnerships and we have them amongst our various organizations. Oftentimes they're tied to like financial commitments. The United Supreme Council has already been given financially to the Alzheimer's Association. So that's not what this is. This is about how to help the Alzheimer's Association have greater reach within our community to help our folks.
Mm. And Dr. Hill, if I don't mind asking you, piggybacking off of what he's saying, now there's something that I really like that you said, Illustrious Donnelly. You said that we're going to start with our members first and then have us be the sounding board. I believe in social proof. And I think that's probably the easiest and the fastest way to be able to create a movement. So, Dr. Hill, if you don't mind, like kind of jumping in there, like hearing that, like kind of what are some of the resources or structures or strategies maybe you're thinking like, hey, that will help our membership first so that we can be well equipped to go out into our communities?
Yeah, I tell you, when Kenyatta, my brother Kenyatta mentioned, donation, we appreciate the giving that the United Supreme Council has done to the Alzheimer's Association. It allows us to do equity work, so that does not go unappreciated, but just like he said, like Kenyatta said, getting, to a grassroots level and dealing with trust. Stigma is real. The Alzheimer's Association is well intended. It's a huge organization, but we know, that there are other organizations, other groups, like our fraternities that we just mentioned, like the United Supreme Council, that have, earned that trust, that have been trustworthy over time, that will allow us to get our resources to people in ways that they can receive it, and that's what we're all about, right? And so, by training and informing, making aware, members of the United Supreme Council first, making sure that, your members are confident in talking about Alzheimer's and dementia, saying exactly what it is, being able to talk about the treatments, the disease modifying treatments, to say, you don't have to, you don't have to sound like a pharmacist, but it's hey, do you know that there are treatments that can slow this thing down? And it's called Leqembi, and you should talk to your doctor about it. Coming from someone that you trust, like your pastor, someone in your community saying that goes a long way to people, seeking help and acting, and so there's that, and just awareness of the disease. We have a 1-800 number, Mr. Barrett, that is always available. People can call our 1-800 number, 1-800-272-3900, 1-800-272-3900, and ask any question about Alzheimer's. Can request a care plan, can ask about, hey, I heard Carl mention those new treatments. Can you talk more about it? If we had as many members as possible from the United Supreme Council know that 1-800 number, and say and believe in it and say, hey, I've called it myself. They treat people with dignity and respect. They value people's time, and they have a wealth of information about Alzheimer's and dementia, and they can link you to a chapter that can help you. If we had your members doing that, we would go a long way in getting our resources out to the community. So there's just, sky's the limit. There's just so much we could do when we have a partnership that's based on trust. And those are the kind of discussions that Kenyatta and myself, members of my staff, members from his team, we've talked at length about what we can do together. That really, really hones in on thinking about shared values of shared knowledge, reflecting on where some of this stuff could have gone wrong in the past, prioritizing mutual respect. So I feel good about where the association and the United Supreme Council is, and I'm looking forward to our activation of our partnership in the years to come.
Doc, there was something you mentioned earlier that struck me, and I wrote a quick note here. You talked about how Black women are even more disproportionately impacted. And I think that's such a crucial point with this relationship because, you know, given that information, although we have, female and male members of our organization, but there's more likely going to be a brother who is possibly listening to this podcast who's going to end up being a caretaker, right? And that's not typically our role, and it's not typically our role in the Black community. And one of our brothers listening to this may end up in that role. And
Yeah.
our goal is just to make sure that that brother listening is hearing it, in this case, man to man, that there are resources out there. Like you're going to have struggles. You're going to have, a hard time, taking this journey with your
Yeah.
loved one. But we are putting ourselves in a position to make sure that you, brother, have a resource that you can go to and you don't have to be ashamed. You don't have to feel alone. Like we're here as other Black men saying that we got your back and we're going to help you get through this. And I just think that's an important part, for us to note as part of, these organizations working together.
Well said, Kenyatta. I mean, that I think is an important goal for what we can do, what we can create, for men, Black men. I think that is a structure, in the way, I mentioned the 1-800 number and the way that Mr. Barrett said, how are you going to activate on this? That could be a unique feature of our partnership, in terms of men having the confidence to serve in the role as caregiver, and shaking off, traditional, values that, are outdated, and saying, I'm going to lean in and be that caregiver that my loved one needs. And so, again, I'm just looking forward to all the things that we can innovate in this partnership moving forward. Yeah.
No, I'm excited because, like I said, we're using this to kick this off and be able to get it blasted throughout our whole jurisdictions, our 26 orients, and what we plan on doing. And one thing I have for you, or question, if you don't want me saying Kenyatta's, all right, use your first name here, sir. We're friends at this point,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
We're friends at this point. What are some of the next steps? Like, what are the things that we're looking at next? And also, I know the way our Sovereign Grand Commander is, he always wants to include the loyal ladies too. And hearing those statistics, now it's like, oh man, we need to look out for our loyal ladies. So hopefully, loyal ladies, if you're looking at this too, this might be your sister, your mom, somebody else. Let's like everybody needs to have this type of information. But again, circling back here, Kenyatta, like kind of what are the next steps here for us? Like what are we looking forward to in the future here?
Yeah, I mean, and the first thing, I mean, you nailed it. I mean, the Sovereign Grand Commander is adamant about having the ladies involved in this effort as well. We had our council deliberation here in Pennsylvania back in November, and I got a chance to speak before the ladies, and we talked about that. In my day job, I work for an insurance company, and we know that women oftentimes drive the healthcare decisions for the household, right? So we need them to be a part of this effort so that if husband don't go to the doctor, we want the wife, nudge them to make sure he goes and he has, his list of things he needs to ask the doctor about that may be troubling. So we want to make sure that they're involved. In terms of our next steps, as Dr. Hill talked about, I mean, there's a lot of partnerships, and we want to make sure that ours is long lasting and that ours is effective. So we are planning a very intentional approach, and we broke it out into 3 phases. So the first phase is what we're in now. It's just an introduction and awareness where we want to make sure that the membership knew about the partnership, make sure that they know that we've entered in this and what it's about, right? We are also going to be asking, coming out of this podcast, we're going to be asking for all of our statewide leaders, our deputies of the Orients, to appoint statewide liaisons, and we're going to have a session with Dr. Hill's team where those statewide liaisons will meet their local chapter counterparts. So we can start building those relationships at the local level. So we're not just talking about this partnership at the United Supreme Council level and the Dr. Hill level. We're starting to break it down to the local levels where they can
Absolutely.
start understanding the resources that are available. And during that phase, getting those resources into the consistories and into the assemblies where a commander in chief can start to integrate that information into his program. So maybe there's something in his newsletter. Maybe there's a space in every meeting to, talk about the Alzheimer's Association. Maybe the deputies of the Orients are having an Alzheimer's Association breakout session as part of their council deliberation each year. So beginning to get those resources in the hands of the leadership, right? So then the second phase is moving right into education. So now taking those resources and focus on educating our members first. So the conversation we're having now, making sure that these conversations are happening on the local levels in the consistories and the assemblies. So as Dr. Hill said, our members are comfortable having the conversation. Our members know the hotline number and the resources that are available. So they're at least educating each other and at least taking that information home. And then finally, in the last stage, we're calling it empowerment and activation. So now that you know the resources, now that you're educated and comfortable, if you feel comfortable, let's take it to the next step and go out to the broader community and start taking that message out. So what does that look like? Maybe we're hosting education sessions at our local church or at schools or community centers, right? Are we doing more to get involved in the programs that are happening at the Alzheimer's Association, whether that's the walk, whether that's the longest day? There's a tremendous amount of opportunities for us to engage directly with the association in terms of education, in terms of teaching people about the research trials, in terms of fundraising. So wherever people feel they're most comfortable in contributing to this effort in that final phase, we're going to make sure that they have the opportunities to do so. So there's no push, there's no, consistory, you need to come up with $5,000. None of that. We're taking it as a phased approach to introduce, educate, and then give you the opportunity to go out and activate. And that's the strategy. So, this is step one. So once we come out of this meeting, there's going to be a push to get those statewide liaisons in place so we can start having the meetings. And we're planning to have that first meeting by the end of February at the latest.
No, and this is something, so I get really excited. I like this type of strategic thinking. And I hopefully when individuals hear it, you hear a very cohesive plan in place. One is logical, it's executable, and it's measurable. So I think it lies along, and please, individuals at home, as you watch this podcast, get excited because it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, everybody can get a piece of this work. That's what I call it, right?
Absolutely.
Everybody can jump into here. I'm already thinking in the back of my mind, Kenyatta, I'll reach out to you because I can tell you right now, I know our commander in chief is one of my best friends. I'm like, hey, sir, we're gonna have to figure out something. We're gonna educate ourselves first. We're gonna put a part in our agenda, and that's what we're gonna do, right? Like we're gonna hit the ground running because one is not a heavy lift, but it's something simple but impactful. Just that phone number. Like I feel very empowered because like I don't have to know anything. If I just give you the phone number, they'll take care of everything. I feel confident doing that. I can give you a phone number every time. You
Right.
know, like I feel
Right. Absolutely.
very comfortable with that.
But
So
it's a great tool, right? It's a great tool to have in your back pocket.
it's
Awesome. And Kenyatta made a point in a meeting a couple of days ago. We were all in Atlanta for a community leader summit with our partners, and Kenyatta made a point. You've got to walk before you run. And when you're putting a partnership together, you want to make sure that you're dealing with this issue of trust and alignment, so that everyone understands where we're headed, and you move in that phased approach into full activation. And I say quite frankly, not all of our partners see it that way. They kind of have something they want to jump into, and we're ready to do that as well. But for the sustained activation that really can make impact, it has to be well thought out, well conceived, and we're excited with the plan really that Kenyatta has laid out, for us to activate around the country. Yeah, really excited about that.
well, no, well, like I said, I'm super excited. And again, Dr. Hill, I want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to speak with me. Kenyatta, I just met you virtually through here. We talked a couple times on email, but you're
Right.
my brother. You my hey, we're gonna have a lot of fun together.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it, brother.
I'm excited to it. And again, so what I want to do now is basically walk and talk to the people here and just let you know what's going to happen to this podcast is we're going to have a number. We're going to have the number up there. So even if you're not ready, you don't have the information or your Orient isn't prepared yet, you at least have the phone number where if you see something, just tell them to call, right? That's the call of action where we can start and then keep an eye out to look for the other communication that's coming from the United Supreme Council. Um, I want to thank you all so much for your time and watching this very important and valuable podcast. We're kicking off season 3 with a banger, right? And understand this, the reason why most people are active in any kind of organization or any type of fraternity, sorority, church is because they have to feel like they're doing something. This is the United Supreme Council doing something. The Alzheimer's Association, they're doing something huge. And again, not just because it hits home for me, but I think it hits home for more people than you know, right? So again, my call to action to you is to follow all our Facebook page, sign up online at United Supreme Council website to make sure you're at the email communication, and then keep a lookout. And again, jot down that phone number that's going to show up on the screen at the end of this message here and for you, and just make sure you have it ready for you if you ever need to. Again, thank you so much. And everybody, hope you have a fantastic, fantastic, fantastic day.